Hi, my name is Ophi YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. I hadn't initially ever planned on making a follow-up to my video about Swoop and the toxic gossip train derailment. That one felt like a one and done to me, and I've largely tuned out of whatever's been going on her channel since then, other than, making a face every time I got suggested her 2-hour participation in the hate train against Blake Lively a couple months back. That's been all over my homepage on YouTube for some reason. My first video about Swoop was very long, and I was also a lot less confident that I had a right to kind of address things that bother me when I filmed that. If you haven't already watched it, I think you probably still should, just for the background, but just know that I made more apologies for myself in that than I would now. I still think that being willing to criticize people who have positive intentions when they fail to live up to those and holding them to high standards is a feminist act. And I also still think that I would be a little bit of a hypocrite to be so willing to speak about Alexa Nicholas doing many of the same things if I were too afraid to comment on Swoop doing the same. However, and there's already a pinned comment about this on that original video, but since I am speaking about Swoop out loud again, I will also acknowledge and apologize for this here. There's about a 2-second portion clipped from the first video. I had been attempting to kind of walk the audience through imagining being one of the 8 passengers' children and seeing an anonymous stranger on the news and her YouTube channel speaking excitedly about your abuse. And I phrased that in a way that, straight up, I just will say it was not cool. I called her a YouTuber in a wig, and I should not have. I said this in my community post and in my pinned comment, but that was inappropriate, and I'm not going to continue to make a big deal out of it, but I am very genuinely sorry. I know better, and I apologize to anybody who was hurt by that phrasing. I just want to start this video off by acknowledging that in that part that I cut off, I was being thoughtless, and that it is racist for a white woman to comment on a black woman's hair, regardless of what her intentions were, so that never should have been in my video. The way the video is currently up, it just says a YouTuber and then cuts to saying the exact same thing it already did, that she had been seeming excited to get a TV hit speaking about all of this. It's just more effective for the argument I was making anyway for that to be cut out. So I'm sorry again, and thank you to the people who brought that to my attention. If you haven't watched that first video about Swoop and you're not going to, that's totally fine. You should still be able to follow this one okay, but you should know about some of the conclusions that I came to in that first video. Essentially, that Swoop has built up an audience of people who are extremely protective of her to the point of shouting down any actual justified criticisms of her, and that she doesn't always do right by that audience that is very protective of her. The majority of the video really was me speaking about what I saw as a mishandling of her coverage of the Colleen Ballinger drama, including a redemption campaign for Joshua David Evans, and how her campaign against Johnny Silvestri seemed a bit disproportionate compared to the actual subjects in that conversation before she let her grudge inform her coverage and the shape that the conversation around that would take for the rest of the summer. I got into this in my first video, and I say it anytime somebody talks to me about their kind of distrust of Swoop's coverage, because they usually express complete agreement. It was her participation in the hate train against Amber Heard that made me distrust Swoop. This was the case for many, many feminists who I hear from all the time. Much like Alexa Nicholas, though, I don't actually know for sure that Swoop identifies herself as a feminist or with the label of feminism, but she talks about survivors and being valid and everything so often that I think she does kind of sell herself to a lot of people as something feminist adjacent. Her participation in the hate mob against Amber Heard, though, and how often that also seems to inform other later content she makes, is what I think kind of gives it away that she's not actually anywhere near feminist adjacent. We talked in my video about separatism about the second wave feminist concept of women being woman identified, and that it wasn't meant in a trans way at that time, but in an identifies with other women rather than with the patriarchy and men kind of way. And if I was going to call any woman male identified, and I wouldn't typically because of the current cultural context around all of that, and that it sounds like I'm misgendering when I'm not, but if I was, Swoop, Emily Baker, really, really high up on that list of women who I would consider to be male and patriarchy identified. And I talk about Amber Heard a lot on my channel, not because I was some existing fan of Amber Heard. Most feminists I know who are protective of her also had not seen any of her movies prior to the defamation trial in 2022. I've still only seen part of Aquaman. My protectiveness over Amber Heard is not driven by her being my favorite movie star or something. I talk about her because, as I've already gotten into for myself and for many other feminists, the large reaction to the Depp versus Heard defamation trial felt like a big blaring tornado siren. Many women have been made into media sacrifices over the years, but something about that Depp versus Heard trial, something about constantly seeing, oh, today's the day they almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow memes, that kind of always felt like they were even acknowledging that they knew that this man was a monster, but that they just thought he should be able to get away with it. All of that made Amber Heard feel like something of a canary in a coal mine to many feminists, myself included. And we discuss bots a lot when we talk about the Depp versus Heard trial and the social media reactions to it, and that's extremely true. There are so many bots who do nothing except for defend Johnny Depp, but there are also a lot of real people who dedicate themselves to that, and in an opposite sort of way than the way that I see Amber Heard supporters doing it. Like, I mean, for sure there are some Amber Heard supporters who liked her in movies first, and I'm sure there also are some Johnny Depp supporters who didn't have a big Tim Burton phase, but they're pretty few and far between, right? So while the bots were real, and bots and algorithms shaped a lot about the response to this trial, there were still actual human beings involved. It wasn't all bots. It was also people who just accepted what they were being told, or, and I have to hope this isn't the case for Swoop, because that would make it worse, people who didn't even accept what they were being told, but repeated it anyway because it was what was driving clicks and views and clout. Swoop's coverage about Amber Heard did very, very well, and she seemed to have absolutely no inkling of how unfair she was being, how uncritically she had accepted the whole, oh, she shit in the bed people thing, and repeated it to tens of thousands of people. I've seen enough of the Swoop videos about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp to know that they're exactly as bad as I worried they would be, but I actually could not get through any of them in full. A lot of people could and did, though. Like I said, the videos did extremely, extremely well for her, and I felt like much of what she does with her channel since then has been an attempt to recreate that success, or that high, that level of excitement, whether that's a purely monetary reaction, or whether it's just because it's what her audience was responding to and she wants that excitement back. But her audience was responding to that because she has built an audience that responds to that kind of thing. And one more thing that I talked about in this first video that I'm going to be talking about again for most of the runtime for this one was a video that she made that audience she built really responded to. Her coverage of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Moving forward, I will be referring to her as Miss Blanchard Anderson. I had referred to her as her given name in my first video about Swoop because I disliked the idea of, like, renaming her, and I do still kind of have somewhat complicated feelings about that, but someone asked me if there are other slurs that I would have just continued to use, and that was a helpful challenge to me because, no, I don't think I would. And I did refer to her by her name on Blue Sky when I posted about making this video, just for the sake of clarity, but if repeatedly saying her name is going to make anyone in my audience feel uncomfortable or disrespected, it's not a hard adjustment to make for me just to not say her given name, which is, of course, known. We know it's a slur. Swoop's initial video about Miss Blanchard Anderson was extremely bad. And bad is not a level of value judgment that I would wholesale apply across Swoop's channel or all of the content she's ever made, but the first video she made on this subject would be what I would call almost actively misleading. You can tell just from the inside the twisted world of titling convention who Swoop had cast as her villain, and I waited and waited for a midpoint switch, a change in the narrative at some point where it would stop centering around Nicholas and instead offer some of the empathy in the enormous, endless wells of empathy being bestowed onto him and onto Dee Dee Blanchard instead of onto the young woman who is so clearly, pretty straightforwardly, a victim here. But that switch never came. The video focused instead on painting Miss Blanchard Anderson as a master manipulator and on painting Nicholas Godejohn as a victim of her, as somebody pulled into something he didn't and couldn't understand. And to prove her point, Swoop armchair diagnosed this man with dissociative identity disorder, and she asked her audience questions about that condition, as well as about autism, which he actually was diagnosed with. And then she used asking questions about both of those things and the answers she got about them as, like, evidence to prove her point, even though only the autism was ever actually relevant in the court trial about all of this because it was the thing that he had been diagnosed with. Even Nicholas's own lawyers did not attempt to use dissociative identity disorder as a defense because he was not diagnosed with it. But it just fit into the fanfiction that Swoop must have written when she watched the act, so she centered her video with that as an entire conceit. Which makes no sense at all until it does, right? Until you go, oh, fuck. Nicholas Godejohn is Johnny Depp to her, and Ms. Blanchard Anderson is Amber Heard. And then once you think that, you go, oh, shit, Blake Lively is also an Amber Heard. That's why there was 2 hours about that. And then finally, I went, oh, fuck. Not only was Johnny Silvestri an Amber Heard, but Joshua David Evans, a man who did some fucked up shit but then pantomimed regret for it and also had a story of being in an emotionally abusive relationship with a woman, was a Johnny Depp. That's why she spent so much time trying to exonerate him. I truly suspect that understanding this typecasting that happens when Swoop approaches a video helps them to make a lot more sense. Hi, I'm editing the next day and I realized that I maybe didn't make my point in like the clearest way that I could. When I say Johnny Silvestri was an Amber Heard, I'm saying that with the acknowledgement that Johnny Silvestri did bad things and misrepresented himself. I went into this, like I said, a lot more in my first video about Swoop. When I say that Johnny Silvestri was an Amber Heard, by that I mean somebody who had bad things happen to them, but then who get excluded from larger empathy about that because of maybe some of their own behaviors or some of the ways that those behaviors are, like, interpreted by other people, which is, like, obviously not a one-to-one comparison. It just only is when you're, like, thinking about it in terms of, like, how was she casting? Who was she looking for that she was trying to rile her audience up about? And how does that also correlate with this current situation? You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of you got there, but just in case that, like, wasn't clear, I just wanted to clarify. Like, I have more complexity in my feelings towards Johnny Silvestri's actions than I do towards the fact that, like, I am so unambiguously pro Amber Heard. And also, if you're, like, at all surprised to hear me say that, and you've, like, watched any Swoop coverage, please go watch the Medusany videos about Amber Heard. The first one is called Amber Heard is an Unambiguous Victim. It is fantastic. I constantly am referring to Medusany as, like, the gold standard of talking about Depp versus Heard on YouTube. Like, if you are at all surprised by the fact that I am so anti-Johnny Depp and pro-Amber Heard, just go watch those. But what's significant about the fact that Swoop ties people to these archetypes is that they're, like, very much not archetypes that she herself or her fans would let her be archetyped into. For example, in the video we're about to discuss, as well as, like, other coverage of people, it's completely acceptable for her to speculate, because this person has trauma, are they going to become an abuser? Can we eat our popcorn and talk about whether or not we think that Miss Anderson Blanchard is going to abuse the daughter she is pregnant with? Which I just think is really fucked up. Are you stealing my hair clip? Is that the only reason you're sitting with me? Like, again, the fact that Swoop has been through trauma is enough that even some people in the comment section of this video are going to tell me that I shouldn't be criticizing her, I shouldn't be hard on her, etc., etc. Happened the first time too. But that doesn't apply to anybody who she covers. So, yeah, I mean, I already said I'm not going to make as many excuses for myself and apologies as I did, and then now I'm back making more apologies and clarifications. So the rest of the video will be as I filmed it yesterday. I just wanted to, like, point out yet again, like, that's another level of hypocrisy, and I didn't get around to the whole speculating on whether or not she will abuse her daughter thing in what I filmed yesterday, other than when it comes up in a comment. I just think that's really gross, and I think that the fact that even saying, like, Swoop maybe wasn't the best to all of her sources during the Colleen Ballinger situation, even that you're not allowed to say because she has been through trauma. And yet, even though we know the kind of trauma that Miss Blanchard Anderson has had to endure, that's all totally fine to speculate on, because she's not the one making us these specific documentary YouTube videos, because she has been typecast into an Amber Heard role. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, if you think I'm wrong and you think that this is just genuinely, like, 3 unconnected situations and not a typecasting, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. And I'm not going to go catch up on a bunch of content that was released between my last video and now. I'm going to focus on just one. As of right now, her most recent video. a follow-up video titled, "The Internet Has Turned Against Rose Blanchard. What No One Is Talking About. Column, Downfall." I'm rethinking my approach to this video. Because, see, I scripted all of that, and then I watched the first 10 minutes of this video. And believe you me, we're gonna talk about the video. But I had intended on scripting that, filming it, and then, watching the whole video, coming back to you with my thoughts, having a little chat about it. I need to process this. It's worse than I was anticipating somehow. It's exactly as bad as I was anticipating somehow. I don't really know where to set my expectations for this, I guess. Like always, it begins with an AMV of greatest hits of clips that you would show people if you wanted them to hate the subject of the video. Also, it's just very edited. I mean, obviously, I do kind of like an under-editing style intentionally. I do the whole conversational thing, but like flash, 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 filter, filter, filter. Quote of Miss Blanchard Anderson pointing out that she did not actually physically kill her mother, which, I'm sorry, I know everybody's mad she points that out, but if everybody talked about it like I had, and I actually hadn't been the one to do it, I also probably would make that distinction. Lots of thoughts about the first 10 minutes of this Swoop video. And this thing's like over an hour long, so I'm not planning on cutting in every 10 minutes just to tell you what I think so far, but like, she hadn't really gotten rolling yet when I paused it. So I figure I'll talk about what she does before she gets rolling, okay? She does her little AMV. She has lots of clips of people who dislike the subject of her video rolled in. She does her typical, like, imagine you have a friend, and you're with that friend at your lowest. And then everybody loves them, and they're taking pictures with Kardashians, and you're alone. But then, the internet turns on that person, your friend. How do you feel about that? Which, I mean, it's her narrative device. That's what she does. Me saying I don't like it is not constructive, but like, okay. She recommends people watch the first part of her video, which, I just did that. I just suggested that you watch my first video about this. Like, I'm not throwing stones here, like, whatever. But she calls it a documentary, which, another thing I went over in my first video, I disagree with. It was not a documentary. It was a bad YouTube video. But anyway, as per usual, we get a merch plug. And, again, very standard, just part of her video. I'm not remarking on anything that's out of the ordinary at this point. Except that this merch plug was really long. Is really, really long. I'm gonna time it. I know she put in her code for the Black Friday sale twice, which, like, okay, whatever. And also, here's another thing about the, like, gratuitous merch plugs. I think if she were doing that rather than a sponsorship deal, I wouldn't even mention it. It's that she does that, and then she does a sponsorship deal, and she does both of those things in the first 15 minutes of the video. Obviously, I don't have, like, merch to plug or anything, but I would really want to try to be mindful of, like, okay, if I have to do the sponsor at the beginning of the video, because I think they might make you, but also maybe not if she got to have 10 whole minutes of video before she got to that point, because she did a really long ad. In addition to her, like, very intro thing. But, like, I would maybe wait and talk about the merch at the end when the people who like you enough to buy your merch are still watching anyway because they like you. But, different strokes. It does start with, like, a lot of that first 10 minutes is commercial, and then she immediately moved into, and I just want to thank today's sponsor, which is when I paused, and I was like, okay, I might as well take this in chunks. I made a community tab post about this before I started filming, and somebody mentioned that the ad plug felt like particularly self-serving, and yeah, I don't know if it's the length. I don't know if it's that it's another piece of merch that's specifically like, hey, wear this because you are strong this time rather than valid. It's unbroken. She also plugged the valid one. She also plugged cesspool merch. Like, it was a lot. It was just a really, really long ad read. I'm talking about it for a long time so you can get some of that experience. So I guess I'm gonna go watch her try to sell me headphones, and then we'll see what she gets into with the rest of this video. Okay, yeah, so we are 13 minutes into the video when it really starts. And she talked about her first video and how her feelings on the subject still haven't changed. There is a teeny tiny little bit of lip service given to the idea of having empathy for the things Miss Blanchard Anderson has allegedly endured, but then a quick insistence on focusing on the fact that she has been convicted as well. So far, we've gotten a summary from Swoop in the first, 3 minutes of the 10-minute section at the beginning. We got a summary of the story as we know it so far, and absent in that quick telling, as in her first video, is any consideration to Miss Blanchard Anderson saying that Nicholas, who, again, I'll remind you, has been cast in the troubled hero Johnny Depp role in Swoop's coverage, sexually assaulted her the night of her mother's murder. Swoop does not mention that, nor that that was done after making her decide between enduring that or having him do it to her mother's body. See, to me, that is a very crucial piece of this story. Except, you'll notice, it does not paint the torture victim as a secret conniving mastermind who got everything she wanted, so it is very often left out. I joked on Blue Sky earlier that I bet that Swoop got at least 5 things wrong in this video, and one of them that I would lay my money on is that the claims are given no air, or that once again she will just present them as if Nicholas's word on them is law. But she's very sure not to present Miss Blanchard Anderson's claims of even the well-documented child abuse she endured as a sure thing. Swoop actually says that she has to say allegedly, legally, since people are contesting her claims of child abuse. And that's not true! That's bullshit! I don't think that's true at all! You can't defame a dead person. I listened to an entire podcast about that. So even if it's not true that Dee Dee Blanchard was abusive, which to be clear, I think she was, and there is lots of evidence that she was, even if that wasn't true, it wouldn't be defaming her to say that now that she's dead, not legally. You aren't doing anything by saying allegedly, other than being a coward and dog whistling that you think her victim is lying about it by insisting like this. But she wants to do that dog whistle, and she also wants to lie so that the few people who are trying to pretend that she is being fair can tell themselves that even though they disagree with her read on the situation, at least she's still being fair and they can keep subscribing and buy a hoodie or something. Judging from the comment section, though, not many of her viewers are disagreeing about her read on this. Obviously, I do. Before we go further, I want to say something about Dee Dee Blanchard. I want to say that I am a bleeding heart liberal, that I oppose the death penalty, and that I don't think that the government should have the right to put anyone to death. And that I also believe that if you torture your child and they kill you, you got what you deserved. Like, not only am I not concerned about the implications of Miss Blanchard Anderson being a free woman and no longer being incarcerated, but my belief is that she never should have gone to prison. Let alone the kind of prison that she was kept in, where she was apparently considered to be too mentally stable to be granted individual therapy, and was only provided that in group settings. I know she shouldn't have even gone to prison is not a universally accepted belief, but it's mine. I think she needed psychiatric and probably immediate medical care. I think it would be impossible for anyone to live through that and be stable and secure enough not to need those things. But if somebody arranges for the murder of somebody who was imprisoning and torturing them, I don't think that that makes them just inherently a risk of doing that again, so long as they're not, going to be imprisoned and tortured without a way out. To be clear, and without any apology to the people who will be angry with me over this, I believe even if Miss Blanchard Anderson had been the one to orchestrate the kill, even if she had gotten blood on her hands directly, which she did not, but does not matter in the discourse about her, I would still feel this way. Because I feel this way about the Menendez brothers. And also, read the Menendez brothers, just the existence of Miss Blanchard Anderson pretty thoroughly guts that whole no one would do this to sisters argument, doesn't it? Because if we're doing all this to a white girl, what would we have done to a pair of sisters who were women of color? Not super related, but kind of related, you know? Like, I just think about that a lot. People say that all the time. We would never do this to women. We would never do this to girls. And it's like, very much would. Possibly if Dee Dee Blanchard were a man, we wouldn't do this to a girl, but for sure we do this to a girl about this. Yeah. I'm gonna keep going. It's just that whole legally I have to say allegedly since people are calling this into question thing that she did, bothered me. It bothered me a lot. Just, you know, another similarity she and Alexa have. Once you are disliked enough by the person who owns that YouTube channel, you're alleged. You're reported. People are saying. When she likes you, when she's gonna sell you a hoodie, you're valid. When you can throw a bunch of Christmas time mid-rolls in, and there's a witch to hunt. I saw Goody Proctor in the woods. Swoop also, again, does the same, like, I'm not actually diagnosing him with dissociative identity disorder, I'm just repeatedly mentioning it as a possibility and saying all the reasons I think so, but I'm not a professional tap dance. Though, this time, she does spend a little more time making it clear that, as I got into in my first video and my introduction here, the only diagnosis that was relevant and that they argued about in court was his autism. I don't understand doing that, dragging the concept of dissociative identity disorder into it in the first place, and then now being like, as attitudes are shifting, I just want to make it clear that he wasn't diagnosed with this, and that people with dissociative identity disorder are valid, and that I don't want to see them stigmatized. And like, I also don't want to see them stigmatized, but girl, you already do this all the time, just not always with DID. You did this with DID with Nicholas the first time around, even if you claimed you weren't doing it, and you do this when you speculate but then clarify you're not a mental health professional, but that some people really seem to you like narcissists. Swoop does this all the time. You don't get to do this and then be like, and by the way, it really sucks when people do this. But there's this thing you kind of can't unsee once you've noticed it in a Swoop video where she kind of takes every possible side of an argument. And yeah, I often will present multiple views or like preemptively argue with myself, but this isn't that. Sometimes it is, like that point-counterpoint section, but a lot of the time it's just her outright contradicting herself. Not even hypocrisy like that. Sure, I believe that she doesn't know that she's doing it when it comes to the mental health thing. That aside, though, it's not even just hypocrisy that she might not notice she's doing. It's like these big, obvious discrepancies in her argument. For example, it is bad that Nicholas is in jail, but when Miss Blanchard Anderson was there, it was all but a vacation. Seriously, Swoop describes the time Miss Blanchard Anderson spent in jail as something that would have been enough to catch her up on a cognitive developmental level to her peers, or maybe even worse, maybe all the way up to mastermind level. Swoop says, without clarification, as she is describing the years that Miss Blanchard Anderson spent in prison, that she had access to therapy. Again, very close to the kind of thing I was saying in the first video, is like just borderline misinformation, because yeah, as I already said and will say again, she had access to group therapy. But a thing about group therapy is that nobody is processing their trauma and actually healing as a person during group therapy. Maybe if people have not been to group therapy, they don't know that. Group therapy is more about like sitting around and filling out individual dialectical behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy worksheets and learning skills that you can use to make sure that you don't hurt yourself when you're in a crisis. Nothing more in-depth is happening in a group therapy setting than that, and she did not qualify for individual therapy where the in-depth stuff happens. And it's like, not only is that another entry on my list of things that she was wrong about in this video, so getting closer to 5, I'm not counting mispronunciations because I'm sure I've also gotten some wrong. But it's just an obvious failure to square against even her other argument, that prison is bad and that Nicholas shouldn't be rotting away there, right? How are you going to present it as an injustice for one person, the person who did commit more of the actual murder, but then act as though the person who only pled guilty to the premeditation part had an amazing spa trip in prison? This is what I mean when I say that I think that this conversation is, like, less than worthless from somebody who's not at least prison reform minded. There's no understanding that the morally consistent take here would be that if you're concerned about Nicholas being in prison, you should also imagine that there would be other prisoners who you would feel empathy for. But of course not. Those are, for the most part, scary people who might have rubbed off on Miss Blanchard Anderson and made her even scarier.
Again, she spent a lot of time in prison around other people who presumably did things that were bad. So are all of the people in prison just great, wonderful human beings who have the utmost honesty and truth in their behavior? Probably not. I'm sure there's good people in there, and I'm sure there's quite terrible people in there. So what does that mean? And I keep coming back.
No, like, well, what does it mean? You can't just say that shit. It makes me wonder, like, is it that Swoop is really this inconsistent internally? Is it that she just doesn't care what she's saying, maybe? Is it that multiple people are writing different parts of the same script and they don't all agree with each other? Or are multiple people even writing it? Does she just feed her shit into ChatGPT if it's not long enough and then films all of it without paying attention to whether or not any of it coheres? I don't know. I've been trying to watch this video for literally hours, and I am 36 minutes in. I cannot express enough to you that if I had not already posted about making this video and I didn't know people were, like, waiting for it, I probably would have bailed. But, I'm gonna keep going. I'm still in the middle of the first actual chapter after the introduction. It's called First Steps of Freedom. I'm gonna try to finish it before I come back because my video is going to be long, and I don't even mind a long video. It's just that it has to know what it's saying the whole time through, and I don't think Swoop videos ever do, you know? I can't do this. I'm 50 minutes in, and I can't do this. My final straw here, Swoop is now not content with having brought up her own diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder last time. Now, in an attempt to correct that, I guess, she's also cautioning people against believing the diagnosis that Dee Dee Blanchard was doing Munchausen by proxy to her daughter. I don't understand what the idea is behind giving this much oxygen to all of this conspiracy theory and also repeatedly being like, can anyone even diagnose a dead person? Does anybody have to believe that? Chat, please weigh in. Mental health professionals in the chat, please let me know. Just let me know what you think. I'm just asking questions. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I don't believe that this torture victim that I hate because it makes me a lot of money and because I knew it would get me enough views that I wanted to plug my Black Friday sale for my merch. I don't think that her mother had Munchausen by proxy. I don't think that she's reliable enough for us to believe that. What is the point of this? What is she doing? What is she trying to do? If you are trying to act like it was what? It wasn't... Like, finish your fucking statement is the thing. I am 50 minutes in, and she refuses to take any fucking stance other than the fact that she obviously, like, could not possibly spend more time kissing the ass of Nicholas Godejohn than she already does. But, what does she believe in? What is she trying to accomplish by being like, a lot of people actually, for all of these reasons that I know that people looking for reasons will repeat, think that Miss Blanchard Anderson is a liar and that there's no way for us to actually know that. And she'll do all of that and she'll say, I'm not speculating though. Just let me know in the chat. I'm not speculating though. But this is a documentary. This is a documentary, even though I am providing nothing of value, even though I am, like, not actually telling you what my beliefs are, except for maybe 1/8 of the time, even though I'm qualifying every statement by also taking the opposite approach. This is a documentary. You are mean. You are bullying me if this isn't a documentary. Because I'm valid. This torture victim is not valid. We don't like this torture victim. We can make a lot of money from witch hunting this torture victim. So was she tortured? Like, if her torturer is dead and can't be there to say, no, I didn't torture her, can we actually believe that she was tortured? This is bullshit. This is as much bullshit as the straight up lie that she legally has to say allegedly when she says that Miss Blanchard Anderson was abused. This is bullshit. She is doing bullshit. She is doing bullshit at me for 2 hours. And I don't know if I can keep watching it. I don't know if I can do it. Like, I can't tell if the amount of psychic damage that I am inflicting on myself here is, like, actually even going to be worth it for me to, like, put together a comprehensive list of, like, rebuttals to all of this bullshit that she's saying. She's mad that this woman, who she has made probably thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars criticizing and witch hunting, she's mad that that person has, like, a PR person. You know, I wonder why she would. It's not like there are several very, very financially rewarding hate campaigns against her like there were against Amber Heard. It's not like Swoop is always looking for the next one of those that she can jump on and or manufacture. I can't tell if watching it all the way through to see if she manages a halfway coherent argument or if she's just going to continue to play every single side and give every inch of ammunition that she could possibly troll on Reddit for, like, what people who want to hate this person can use against her. I don't know that me responding one by one to all of that is going to be helpful. I don't think it is. Because my feeling is that this video that she made should not have been 2 hours long. And my video does not need to be 2 hours long. I do not need to talk about this child abuse victim for that long. None of us do. And if you truly just don't believe she should be an influencer, we should just stop paying attention to her. Just don't pay attention to her. Don't engage. Don't watch her YouTube videos. Don't watch her reality TV show. I don't watch her reality TV show. I kind of think nobody should. But I also kind of think, what else is she going to do? Ignoring the fact that, and again, like, this is why I'm saying, like, people need to already care about convicts if they think that they get any say in what happens to this particular one just because she's famous. Even setting aside the fact that it can be hard for ex-convicts or people with felonies to, like, find gainful employment in many cases, even if she could just get a job totally fine, do you think she's going to be left alone at that job? Do you really think that? The John and Kate plus 8 people were in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, and TMZ sent people to go travel and specifically stay in Pennsylvania to take pictures of them. You think somebody wouldn't be camped out in front of the Best Buy or Target or wherever? You think she's not going to get harassed? Do you think somebody's not going to figure out where she works and show up and be like, hi, murderer? Do you think they're not going to feel a little bit emboldened to do that kind of thing after they watch an enormously successful 2-hour-long YouTube video about what a criminal mastermind she is and how she got more evil and sneaky and conniving because she was in prison? None of this is useful. None of this is helpful, but she is pretending like it is. She is pretending like she is raising these interesting questions. She is pretending like she's doing anything other than being a fucking drama channel. And, like, per usual, you know, just be a drama channel. I have so much less to criticize for somebody who is only trying to be a drama channel. But she is trying to be so much more, and she is constantly eating fucking concrete at it. It's bad. It's just falling on your face every time you try to make a point, and then standing up and being like, and one other thing, I hate women. I'm not saying everybody who, like, does not like this person is a misogynist. I'm not saying Swoop even realizes that she is a misogynist. I'm just saying I don't think that you can get this invested in a hate campaign against a woman unless you are. And, like, it's an actual hate campaign. Like, I'm sitting here criticizing Swoop for things she put and said in a video. Swoop is sitting there criticizing a child abuse victim for her romantic relationships, for her childhood, for what people who have nothing better to do but sit around on TikTok and fantasize about what it would be like if she was a big villain have been, like, saying online. There's a big difference between, like, criticizing somebody's content and just being like, today I will make a 2-hour-long video about somebody who has been through really, truly unimaginable trauma. And I especially am going to do that as somebody who weaponizes her status as a trauma survivor to shut down people who tell me otherwise, because that's easy money, baby. I don't really feel like I need to sit here and make further arguments for the fact that I will never, ever be convinced to care and to be concerned about whether or not this person is a free woman. I think she should have been this whole time. I don't think she needs to be a good person, a friendly person, a perfect person for that to be the case. I don't really give a shit what she's getting up to. And the crucial difference, and one that Swoop again and again and again asks you to completely ignore in her video, is that, like, these crimes happened in different contexts. In the context of the young woman in question, in the context of Miss Blanchard Anderson, it was her mother. It was her mother who was keeping her imprisoned, who was torturing her, who was subjecting her to medical treatments she did not need. And for Nicholas, it was a stranger. It was the mother of a vulnerable young woman who he met online, who he killed the mother of, and then sexually assaulted the young woman. And if I'm being presented with those two people and somebody's saying, you think these people are going to do this again? Yeah, I might say that I think that the guy who did that with the woman's family is more likely to do that again. But I do not think that this person is, like, at all somebody who I have to at all worry is going to be any kind of repeat offender. I don't know. I guess that's kind of just where the conversation begins and ends for me. Like, no, I do think there's a difference between these two people. So therefore, everything you're saying that hinges on the idea that there is, like, some cosmic unfairness happening for Nicholas to be in prison and her not to be, we don't agree on that. I certainly don't agree that somehow the autism is, like, a big compelling factor for Nicholas. The same way that prison being bad is a big compelling factor for Nicholas, and then just doesn't matter for Miss Blanchard Anderson. I said I wasn't cutting in again. I want to clarify this point because the way I said it was a little bit sloppy. I do believe that Nicholas is autistic, as he was diagnosed with and as came up in his court defense, right? I also believe and understand that people who have autism are much more likely to be manipulated, and also that oftentimes they are much more likely to be the victim of abuse rather than to be the perpetrator of it, which is part of why painting his diagnosis as if that is what made him commit the murder is bad. It is still a truth about him. It doesn't need to be ignored. And yes, I understand the intention behind thinking like, oh, if this is a category of people who we think are easily manipulated, maybe he was just manipulated into this. However, the point I was trying to make is we are disregarding the idea that Miss Anderson Blanchard also was manipulated and vulnerable to manipulation. And we have just as much evidence that she would be vulnerable to manipulation because we know that that's what happens to people who are, like, victimized and tortured, especially to the degree that she was. So I just don't buy that it's compelling only in the case of Nicholas and not in the case of, again, the woman who we have chosen. It is very profitable to witch hunt. Like, it's a lot with this. I think it's a lot of, like, good intentions, wrong target. Or, like, bad intentions of hating a woman, finding a lot of reasons to act on those intentions you have of hating a woman that makes it seem like you found an acceptable target. Again, like, in my script that was clear, and then I heard it out loud as I was watching my final cut of the video, and I was like, I should probably correct that. Like, if 8 years in prison would have solved Miss Blanchard Anderson's issues, why does Swoop not believe that's what's currently happening for Nicholas? And it's because she doesn't believe anything she says, I think. And I just don't know how many more times I can find a way to say that about whatever she says in the next hour of this video. So I think I'm going to call it. I think this is as far as I can get into this video. I just, for some reason, you know, to say, like, we will ignore the person who was being medically abused because we've decided we don't trust her. And because we don't trust her, was her mother mentally ill even? Do we know? Can we say? Like, that's it for me. That's it. I'm done. There's nothing valuable in the back half of this video if it is that full of dog shit in the beginning and the middle. Let me take a look at what I've got so far. Let me take a look at my comments on that community post, and then I'm going to come back and film my conclusion. Maybe I will calm down a little bit in a sweater. Yeah, so I made my community tab post earlier today. Interesting to see if I get this out all in one day, or if this is yesterday by the time I upload. And my post just said, this one's not going to be as big of a deal or as long. Well, fingers crossed it won't be as long. I never know until I'm done filming, no matter how long my scripts are. I didn't have any intentions of making another video about Swoop, but even just the thumbnail and the first two things I heard about her most recent video regarding Miss Blanchard Anderson have me feeling compelled to address that. Let me know if you have anything you want to make sure I mention in that one. Feel free to use this post or the suggestion form. As is obvious from it being an entire section in my first video regarding the matter, I have some real deep-seated issues with the way she approaches this topic, and I've got this sinking feeling the new video was not much more responsible than the first one was. And I would say, yeah, my sinking feeling was correct. First of all, a lot of the immediate response was like, yes, and I appreciate that a lot. It's really assuring when I like have an idea and I get to like immediately get encouragement about it. So thank you very much. I really appreciate being trusted with like nuanced things. Yeah, thank you. So I've already touched on a lot of this already, and it would have been in my mind no matter what, but it especially was as a result of Out of Here 2534's comment. And they said, it's so very stigmatizing, like assuming that she will perpetuate a cycle of harm without knowing her, overlooking the fact that GRB is probably doing influencer stuff because it's all she can do as a high-profile ex-prisoner, and also giving space to the idea that she, as a child, was a manipulator. It is wildly judgmental and irresponsible. And I already commented on this one to agree, but I will say it again, and I'm saying the comment out loud in the video because it's such a good comment. I completely agree. Certainly getting this name wrong, I'm very sorry. I think it's Darren Schwarzrab. That came out too easy. It's almost certainly wrong. But you said, please do. The comment section was so atrocious to look at. Seeing so many people concluding that Mrs. Blanchard lied about everything, including the abuse she suffered at the hand of her mom, is extremely concerning and something that I think is worth pointing out in your video. I agree. People will always make their own conclusion to a video they watch, and it can be the complete opposite, which is unavoidable no matter how neutral something may be. But I fear that in Swoop's case, she presents her extremely biased view as something logical/grounded, which feels like classic TV drama manipulation, or, dare I say, like in some documentaries too. The lack of any empathy or nuance in the comments is also striking, and kind of feel goes against, I don't know, Swoop's whole "you are valid" mentality. Yeah, I completely agree. I haven't mentioned this yet, I don't think. For half a second, when I saw the title and it was like, the internet turned on this person, I was like, wow, maybe she's realizing that she did a bad thing last time. But in the whole 50 minutes I watched, other than like kind of course correcting about how she had like really just pulled that diagnosis for Nicholas from like just some quotes that were not ever from professionals in the last video, doesn't seem like she feels any kind of like guilt for having been one of the first voices that turned on Miss Rose Blanchard. I think it wasn't like exactly ahead of the curve, but the first time she covered her was already being critical. So titling a video with this convention is like that hot dog meme of the like, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. Crest Flames 492 I'm just so disappointed with her actions. I was already upset and unsubscribed to her during the Depp Heard trial, but since then she's just turned the dial up to 11. It feels like she thinks she's the arbiter of truth, the only one who can determine who is a fake victim or who isn't, which is just an inherently flawed mindset. It just sucks to see someone who has been so open about her abuse go after other victims. And for what? People praising her in her comment section? It's shameful. Again, I know I'm just reading comments and saying like, wow, I completely agree, but like, you are all very smart. And again, like I was saying earlier, like a lot of people lost a lot of people lost their faith in Swoop during her coverage of the Depp Heard trial. So I appreciate showing the proof of that, since I had already mentioned it. Bradley J says, I don't think I ever finished Swoop's first video on GRB. The way the internet has eaten this woman alive for the decades she's been in prison and then continue to feast off of her makes me sick. Swoop brings no empathy or nuance into the conversation. It was what led to me unsubbing from her. I haven't stayed caught up on what's happening in GRB's life now post-prison because I'm firmly in the camp of just let her live her life. I have so many thoughts, but I really feel like the whole conversation needs to be handled with a lot more nuance and empathy than I have seen in virtually every corner of the internet, and I very much am here for you bringing that conversation forward. Thank you so much. That is really, really kind to say. Like I said, it means a lot to be trusted with this, and I agree, like there's just not empathy for this person who it feels like it should be extremely easy to extend empathy to. And maybe it is because she assumes that the empathy is, like, unspoken, but it's very much not. I Hate Mickey G says, dude, I just watched some of the video, mainly using transcript as key. That was smart. I should have done that. And I got pissed a few times, but the exact things you have had to point out before have happened again. Hypocrisy in content. At 51:17, she specifically says, I have chosen not to dig into this because I am not personally comfortable with making claims about Miss Blanchard Anderson's health and an alleged chromosome disorder. Right after, Swoop had just gotten done making allegations about GR and Dee Dee's physical and mental health, allegations about manipulation as a child, etc. And let's not pretend this is a documentary when the focus of comments is just as much about GR's love life as it is about her being a narcissistic killer. Not to mention the zoom ins and outs when mentioning a conspiracy and saying, class, talk amongst yourselves on that one, okay? Like, ma'am, this is a tea video. A tea video that is docu-length because half of it is repeated content from your last video on the topic. And only not fully in the tea genre because you're also talking about true crime, but promoting your merch for almost 10 minutes at the beginning. Even commentary comedy YouTubers I watch will mention their merch for like 10 seconds and then won't show a full lookbook of it till the end of the video. Ugh, just all of this. Come on, man. Lastly, a note. Something that pissed me off initially was saying that, yes, GRB has been through trauma and may not be fully past it, but according to her, on interviews on Vile Files, she is extremely intelligent and eloquent, or something. I commented along the lines of, what does being intelligent have to do with processing trauma? You know from your own viewers as well as yourself that you can be imperfect and or incomplete with processing trauma while also being intelligent and eloquent. I'm just done. I completely agree. Again and again, Swoop tried to make the point that to say that this is all cruel and mean and overkill and that Miss Blanchard Anderson is in fact a victim is like infantilizing her and taking away her autonomy. And she's very eloquent. She's very well spoken. So in fact, she is actually a mastermind manipulator. It's really, really fucked up. I completely agree. I couldn't get through it. I could not get past it. I got 50 minutes in. So it was right before that timestamp, when I said, no, I can't do it. Finchy W99 says, I watched part of it and had to turn it off because it was disrespectful and also didn't discuss anything in real depth. Obviously, same. I don't know what the purpose of it even was. I especially feel like, given that Swoop is constantly talking about how she's an advocate for mental health, which is good, she would be more understanding towards the fact that G. Rose is traumatized in ways none of us can understand. Saying this as someone who is horrified at how G. Rose has been turned into a celebrity and honestly wants to stop seeing her in the public eye. I just want her to be left alone. I think idolizing her is very weird and probably damaging to her. I appreciate that Swoop has empathy for the ex-boyfriend, though as an autistic viewer, I felt iffy about the lack of research Swoop seemed to do aside from asking autistic viewers to comment. I felt she could have done more reading, talking to experts, etc., but I feel like that empathy should have been extended more towards G. Rose. I used to like Swoop's videos. Disclaimer that I didn't follow her Depp trial closely, and I don't think I watched her coverage of it because it was just not good, / I think she was late to cover it anyway. But things have just seemed to get more and more gross over the past year or more, especially given that she seems to tout herself as a documentarian. She's making glorified drama videos, and I would have less criticism if she didn't market herself as making documentaries. It's just that there are certain standards / ethics that someone making a documentary is generally expected to follow. Also, sorry to reply again, but the topic of G. Rose potentially faking her illnesses / being in on the lie came up during the video. Regardless of her views on G. Rose, I would have thought that Swoop would have discussed how speculating about whether or not someone is faking an illness is ultimately harmful for people with chronic illnesses because people are that much more likely to accuse us of faking. But sadly, that point went unaddressed. Yeah, 100%. That was a point in the Colleen Ballinger videos when it was a bad thing about haters back off that she was like faking her illness in the TV show, Angela from The Office. And yet here, that's a perfectly acceptable conspiracy theory to bring up. And to, as the other commenter said, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, discuss it amongst yourself, class. I completely agree though. Like much the same way that I think that she's like just piling on to an existing stigmatization that we know exists of ex-convicts. She's just also doing that to chronically ill people, and like even to people who are chronically ill in a way that is visible. It is fucked up. There are 59 comments on this, which some of that includes my responses, so it's like slightly less than that, but like still, there's a lot of comments. I've only read a few of them, and there is one more that I want to read, and it is long, but it is incredibly thorough and in-depth, and thank you so much. Like I said earlier, I feel like me going through and being like, Swoop said this and this and this and this, and like, here are the true things. I didn't really want to sit here and spread out all of the details of this child abuse case. Like, I'm sorry that I'm more concerned about that than the murder, but I just am. I'm just gonna be real with you. I didn't want to talk about the ways that this girl had been tortured. Like, I didn't want to do the level of research I would need to do to, like, thoroughly debunk all of this, because I think it's none of all of our business. And I think that this commenter, AHSH9DW, speaks to that as well. This is a long comment, and it is one that I am extremely thankful for. I got a relevant story in regards to this, and a bunch of other stuff that I want to say. One of the people who's been spreading the DV apologia in regards to Rose is a woman named Fancy. Fancy and the Good Wives Network has put Rose's medical records up, without her consent, behind a Patreon paywall. She recently released them, although I don't think it's all of them, on her Patreon for free. On the free Patreon post she released them, she also claimed that they were her copyright, and that she would use the legal system to take down anyone who reposted them without her written permission. This infuriated me, as she lit her source behind a paywall, released someone's medical records without their consent, profited off of those records, and then claimed those records are her copyright when they most definitely are not. Because I was upset about this, I was complaining about it in a Rose video comment section, and Fancy showed up to tell me that I must have been confused because all she said was that her book, which G stands, had illegally leaked, was her copyright. I told her what her Patreon post said, and she told me that it didn't say that, despite me looking right at it. You can find this post on the Good Wives Network Patreon, and the post is titled G. Rose Medical Documents and Research on Chromosome Disorder. Another person who's been promoting it is Becca Scoops. She claims to be a psych nurse and journalist. I've seen no evidence that she is, but regardless, she uses those credentials to add authority to her word. I'll admit, I haven't been able to sit through much of her stuff, but the stuff I have seen includes her hyping up some psychologist as a trusted expert in autism, and then quote him as saying that Asperger's is when you have the desire to socialize, but not the skills. That autism is like Asperger's, but without the desire to socialize. And what sad individuals autistic people are. She gave no indication that any of this was wrong and continued to say that Nick had Asperger's throughout the video. This is in the video, Cops Spill Hot Tea About G. Rose Blanchard, Part 4, Nick. I'm just pausing to cut in here and say that that is absolutely bananas. Like, just evil behavior. Just evil behavior to, like, pretend like you have any kind of copyright or leak somebody's medical documents. And also, I'm sorry, I'm seeing some Alexa Nicholas parallels. All roads lead back to Alexa Nicholas here, I guess. But, like, this is what all of this true crime bullshit normalizes. Oh, I have medical records. I'll just put them on my Patreon. I'll just link the drive on my Twitter. It's fine. Everyone can see everything. I'm not the one who's being vulnerable here. Wow. Holy shit, this is so disgusting. You continued more, and I also want to read that, but I just, like, I wanted to say, like, Jesus, I am very, very upset by that. So you continued, and you said, in regards to the argument that there was no medical abuse, it's been proven unambiguously that Rose didn't have cancer or need a wheelchair. But people like to say that this wasn't abuse, as if Rose did it willingly and got free stuff for it. This is obviously ridiculous, as she was a child during most of that. In regards to all the other procedures, they claim that it was needed due to Rose having microdeletion 1q21.1. I don't know if she had that, and I don't care. Not all the procedures, such as the salivatory glands being removed, can be explained by that disorder, and the ones that can just so happen to be the most common procedures people get due to medical abuse. By making out like microdeletion 1q21.1 proves she wasn't abused, they're implying that it isn't possible to do that to someone unless they're in 100% perfect health, which is an awful thing to say, especially when medical abuse is often exaggerating existing illness. I believe people dislike Rose as a person, which is fair enough. She seems awful. But then they go on to treat her being awful as a justification for what she went through, which is unacceptable. Instead of treating her as a child who was caught in a cycle of abuse and who could hopefully break it with enough help, they treat her as a devil child who was actually the ringleader of the scams. That is so much more in depth than anything that I knew that anybody other than Swoop was doing in regards to Miss Blanchard Anderson, and that is fucking horrifying. Yeah, no, you are completely right. Like, she may have had, like, even if she was sick, and even if she wasn't, like, it just, I'm sure she would feel sick by the time her mother was done with her. I know you know what I mean. I was going to say you know what I mean, but, like, I just read that whole comment. You very clearly know what I mean. We're very clearly in agreement about this. And again, I know it lands for different people in different places. Some people, like, really don't like her to an extent where it makes them not have as easy of a time accessing feeling protective of her, but as is already evidenced by what I was already saying about Amber Heard, like, I don't need to already like somebody or have reasons to like them in the future to still feel protective of them. That's also echoed in my feelings about Courtney Love, right? Like, I'm consistent. I try to be consistent. It matters to me that my internal reasoning is consistent. So yeah, I completely agree, and I am so thankful for hearing from all of you so quickly, and also to everybody who I heard from on my first video about Swoop. I think that's the best a video I've made has ever done, which was cool. Thank you. I don't have an interest in continuing to talk about Miss Blanchard Anderson on my channel. I haven't ever had an interest in talking about her other than, like, in response to the fact that I just think that she should be left alone. I think that even disliking her very, very much doesn't mean anything other than that you should leave her alone. I understand we kind of culturally all expect a little bit more than that. Like, it's a neutral thing for us to also engage in a train wreck while being like, there's a train wreck over there. Can you believe everybody's looking at that? Here's 2 hours about everything everybody's saying about the train wreck and how much better I am than everybody who's saying all of that, even though I'm feeding into a lot of these conspiracy theories and people are half listening to me. I don't know. I guess Swoop does kind of remain fascinating to me in terms of, like, something that I watch and see a lot of things that I do not want to do on my channel. If you can think of anything you do want me to do on my channel, short of watching the last hour and 10 minutes of this video about Miss Blanchard Anderson, I have a suggestion form. I completely forgot that it existed for like a couple of months, so I made a new one, and you can fill that out if you have a suggestion. You can also make suggestions just in the comments of my other videos, community posts. I'm open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again so much to everybody who engaged, even and especially the comments that I didn't read and the comments that I did read. Really, really great to be able to have things be like so interactive and community feeling around here. It's just nice. I think I'm uploading this the day before or on Thanksgiving. Very thankful for all of you. That's corny, but I've been making videos for just about a year now, and I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot this week about like how I have grown into my comfort in doing that and how grateful I am to all of you for making that so easy to grow into comfort about. And since I already broke my continuity before, I hit 9,000 subscribers between last night and now. And I just want to say how much that means to me and how amazing that is. Especially, like, for it to happen on a major family commercial holiday that I have some baggage around because I have spent all of those alone, like, going back to when I was 19. So to know that I'm not spending that alone, to have made this video yesterday and be finishing it today, and knowing that I'm kind of, in a way, spending time with all of you on my Thanksgiving, if not on yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hearing me out. Here's what I was saying last night when I first filmed my conclusion to this video. Thank you as well to my lovely Patreon subscribers. If you're interested in a way to help support me financially, I have a Patreon. You get a couple extra videos from me every month over there. I also have like a coffee tip jar if you're interested in a one-off donation or tip, which is a huge help for me financially. Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody who has supported me through the Patreon, through the coffee, just by engaging with my videos, commenting on them, watching them all the way through to the end, as you did today, even though this one was long. Thank you. I'll be back again soon to talk about something else. Obviously, this one just, like, grabbed me by the hair today and wouldn't let go of me, so here we go. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.